we're going to get to that in a minute. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to go through the presentation, and we're going to be looking at understanding health in its true definition and context. We're going to look at the issues that we face in terms of chronic lifestyle diseases that's getting out of hand. And then we'll come to an understanding as to why this is happening so that we would appreciate the solutions that we would have, including the technology that we're going to talk about. And so let me share my screen now, and we will begin. Let me make sure that the audio. Okay, so as Dr. Glasgow said, I promote a lifestyle model I call whole living, and it's all about navigating life with spiritual awareness. And a lot of what I'm going to share with you are concepts that come out of that will help to give us a broader understanding and a more true understanding of what health really is. And I'm just going to ask that you really listen with your hearts. Take notes, if you will. At the end, we're going to have an opportunity to ask questions. So, but health really is the foundation of a fulfilled life. And that may sound odd, but we'll get to understand that. We're going to be looking at how we can live stress-free, because it's the number one cause of chronic lifestyle illnesses today. We'll get to see that. We're going to look at how we can experience the future of optimal wellness, how we could live disease-free, and how we can actually recover from any illness once we are willing to go the distance, and discover the secret of thriving and not just surviving, which is what most people on the planet are doing today. And so we're going to be looking at focusing in on health and the mind, and with the understanding of how our thoughts shape our life. And I'm going to begin with a definition of health that comes from the World Health Organization. It says health is a state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. I inserted spiritual there because in their definition, they did not have it. Now, it could not be a state that is complete unless it included our spiritual well-being. And so what I want to emphasize in this definition is that health is a state of being, and it's a state that is complete, and it encompasses every aspect of our lives, physically, mentally, spiritually, socially, and how that fits into that social framework. And so we need to not think of health as how many of us might have been conditioned to perceive it, that it's about our bodies, how our body feels and how our body is functioning. That is a very narrow context. And if we continue to look at it that way, I promise us we are not going to be able to avoid the chronic lifestyle conditions that creep in as we get older, just because of that narrow perspective. A lot of people in my 25 years of clinical practice, it became very clear that most of us think that if we don't feel sick, we are healthy, and that is simply not true. Not having any symptoms or not feeling sick does not mean that we are healthy, because health is a state of being that encompasses every aspect or every dimension of our life. And a state of being simply means how we are based on who we are. And so that's where we're going to be going with it. So we need to understand that health encompasses every dimension of life. And when we cultivate health, our life will flourish in every dimension. So, a truly healthy life is physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and financially, that every dimension is in order and is fruitful, and that we are prospering in every area. That's truly a healthy life. Now, improving our health and cultivating it, it is the most significant investment we could ever make in our lives because every area of our life stands on it. And I just want to get that across. Now, in the model that you see on the screen, the first four aspects of it relates to our personal well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Our social well-being, or the social dimension of it, is the catalyst that ensures that we can maintain our own personal well-being intact. And with that, that forms the bridge that leads us in to financial empowerment. People ask me, what does that have to do with it? Well, because of the material world that we live in and the whole social framework is it is upheld by economic structures. And if we're going to function in the world and we're going to live an optimal quality of life and standard of living, we have to be able to have sufficiency in that dimension as well. And that entirely depends on how we bridge through our social framework, which also helps us to maintain the type of balance we need to have physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That in itself is just another story. But just for us to get the point that when we talk about health and cultivating health, we need to be aware that every dimension of our life is part of the model. And to move away from that old definition, that old paradigm where we think that health is just about how our body feels and functions. Let me also say this in this regard, that if we are struggling in any one area, chances are a similar struggle exists in other areas as well, because it's one whole model. Our life it springs from a single root, which is our spiritual well being. It springs from that, it's one life, and it's not separate parts. And we have the tendency to think of it in the sense that if something is physically wrong, we go to a doctor. If it's mentally and emotionally wrong, we may go to see a counselor. Spiritually, we may go to see our pastor. Financially, we go and see a coach or whatever. And so we have broken it up, but it's not separate parts. It's one whole life, and they're all integrated. When we are deficient in one area, it will follow through to the other areas as well. And so when we fully understand the model, which we won't be able to get into all the dynamics tonight, but when we fully understand the model, we'll see how seamless it really is. So true health is really the full expression of our lives, and it's rooted in a clear awareness of self, a clear awareness of who we are, a clear awareness of our sense of well-being. And so because we have looked at health in a very narrow context, we have today what we call a global pandemic of chronic lifestyle-induced diseases. A global pandemic, and the World Health Organization calls it the global burden of disease, where 60% of adults have lifestyle diseases, and it accounts for 74% of global deaths. It's the actually number one cause of death on our planet. It has an annual mortality rate of 50 million people. When we had the COVID pandemic a few years ago, and it was a global pandemic, and in the 2 years that it was very prevalent, it took 20 million lives, and it was a big deal to the whole world then. But here it is, we have a global pandemic of lifestyle-induced illnesses, and it's taking 50 million a year, and we don't really think much of it. And it's a much greater pandemic. The interesting thing is that the World Health Organization says that in the next decade, it's expected to get even worse. Now, that's very strange to me because we are improving in knowledge, in know-how, in technology, yet it's gonna get worse. Now, that alone tells us that our approach and our understanding, there's something deficient if that is the case. There has been an increase, more than 70% increase in the use of prescription drugs, which, according to statistics, what they call iatrogenic diseases that come out of using pharmaceutical drugs and medical interventions, it's the third leading cause of death on the planet. And I'm saying that to highlight why we want to be careful of doing this thing, living our lives so correctly, because we are very capable. We have all that we need to be able to live in such a way that we do not have to become a victim of these statistics. As a result, mental health disorders are moving to the forefront. It's becoming crazy how much mental illnesses and cognitive decline issues are moving to the forefront. And what I want to highlight is that what develops in the human body as chronic lifestyle disease is really not the problem. It is just a reflection of the problem, but not the problem itself. And so, what we have been doing, because of our narrow understanding of health having to do with our bodies, we have developed an approach that just deals with symptoms and managing conditions. We are very good at crisis intervention, but in terms of lifestyle diseases, which accounts for 80% of the healthcare model, we're not very effective. We just know how to help, to control, and to manage. And so while medicine does have its place and it can save our life, it will not make us healthy, nor will it prevent us from developing these illnesses. That is personal responsibility, and that's what we have to do. And so as we move into how we can understand this, I want to look at this quotation by a famous American inventor. We all will be aware of him, Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb. He said that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. He said that back in the 1800s, which to me was very insightful, that a time can come, and we are in that time now, where can you imagine a time where no medicine would be necessary to deal with chronic illnesses that might be developed? And so I want to focus on that, the fact that it is possible that we can heal, recover, and prevent illness even without medicine. Now, it has its place, don't get me wrong, but the potential is there where it may not always be necessary. Once we understand the cause and the prevention of disease, and when we understand that, it'll become clear to us that the names that we give to conditions that form and develop in the body, that's really not the problem, but there is a deeper problem that we have to look at. And it comes out of understanding that health is about our entire life, and it's a state of being that accommodates a balanced way of living right across the board. And now it is possible to live or to heal and recover without medicine, because healing is by design. It's a divine design, and it's a creative flow of life that's woven in to the very makeup of the human being. So what we call innate healing in medicine, it is the creative flow of life that's woven into the human design. What that really means is that it is not something that you have to induce. It's not something you have to stimulate. It's not something you have to activate. It is continuously and forever and infinitely flowing through our bodies. It is what causes our hair to grow when we cut it. It is what causes a cut to mend, a broken bone to heal and fix back on its own. It is what every millisecond that passes, our body is recreating itself. Every second, new cells are being rebirthed. Every 7 years, our entire body has been remade. It is continuously flowing. And if we have a condition and it's not healing it, something is blocking that creative flow. And that creative flow comes from the very essence of our being, which is spiritual. And if we understand that we are indeed spiritual beings by nature, we ought to understand, and of course, this evening is not getting into that, but just from the very nature of that, it doesn't just animate this body and gives it life. By its very nature, it is what continuously keeps healing the body. Now, in medicine, there is a phenomenon, they call it spontaneous healing. And spontaneous healing, for those who may not be aware, you could always go and look it up. It is, and there's lots of medical literature of tens of thousands of cases around the world where people have life-threatening and or terminal conditions of which there is no medical cure, and the people completely recover. I'm talking about terminal cancers, tumors in the brain, tumors, and they just completely recover without any specific type of treatment. Now, there's a whole process, and in the medical literature, they understand now how and why that happens. But I'm saying this to highlight to us that within the human system, they, they exist a capacity that is inherent to our true essence of being, which is spiritual, that will heal and repair from anything. The interesting thing is that this is all validated in the sciences of psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, quantum biology, quantum physics, and even in our spirituality. You can look at some of the scriptures and it points to the fact that there is this innate potential that we possess. Even if we were to look at some of the major healings that's recorded in the scriptures that Jesus did, Jesus would say, your faith has made you whole. Your faith has made you well. Interesting that he's not said the Father's power, my power, but when he may speak a word and he says, your faith, like the woman with the issue of blood, came to your faith. In other words, the catalyst was inside of you. There's something that you possess. And we see that in what we call the placebo effect, and so much documented evidence in the literature. So I'm saying all that to say, where is that coming from? Where does that come from? People say it's the power of the mind. Indeed, the mind is a catalyst in it. But the essence of where it arises from and where it emanates from is our true essence of being, which is spiritual. And when I say spiritual in this context, I want to take the religious garb off of it and understand it from the perspective that it's a capacity of how we are designed to function in this earth in a dimension of reality that is beyond the physical senses, where we can tap into deeper truths and deeper understandings of life that cannot be accessed through our physical senses. It's a functional capacity of the human being. But what arises out of that is what heals the body from anything. It is how we can return to living by our true essence of being. So is it possible that we can heal without medicine? It's being done all over the world. It's medically documented all over the world. It's just not part of mainstream medicine. Because the truth is, big pharma will now and will for a long time will continue to control the medical system, or what we call the healthcare system. And so this is now becomes our personal responsibility to do this. So just to bring that home to make it a little bit clearer, is that as three-dimensional beings of spirit, soul, body, the order of life, the design of life always flow from invisible to visible, from the unseen into the seen. It flows, the natural order is from spirit, which is our true identity, our true essence of being, and it flows into the soul, which is the bridge that takes us into our physical reality. And the our purpose, our potential, our capacity really resides in our divine identity. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, But this is a model that has a very in-depth teaching, which we do in our workshops. But this is where it all comes from. This is our true essence of being. And we are designed to live from the inside out. However, when our thoughts, when our soul, which is mind, heart, and will, thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and choices, this is where our sense of identity is established. If our sense of identity is not defined by our spiritual nature or by our spiritual essence or our spiritual identity, if our sense of who we are is not defined by that, then it is going to be defined by the other element of we have a physical and a spiritual nature, either one or the other. But you see, but when our thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and choices clash with our spiritual nature due to adopting a false sense of identity, it creates a tension right here. Now, this tension that it creates here is kind of like a block in the way of light. So, for example, think of our spiritual nature, which is actually light that flows. It's the light of life that flows through our being. If you put a block here, it's going to cast a shadow right over here. That's what we'll do if anything blocks light. Sickness and disease is the shadow that's cast in the body because a blockage happens right here, and this light is not flowing all the way through. What does that? Our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, the choices that we are making, that is contrary to our divine essence. You see, when we lack awareness of our true nature, doing precedes and replaces being. So when we lack the awareness of our true sense of being, doing becomes the driving force, not being anymore. Doing, and it shapes that sense of identity that is defined by performance, achievements, appearance, conforming to societal norms, fitting in, finding validation. We must have people validate us, confirm us, recognize us. For us to have a sense of worth and value, the world must define us in a particular way. And so we tend to now do more. In order to get ahead, we have to do more, do more, do more. And so we are conditioned by an external reality, by society, to take on a sense of identity that for most of us, that's how we are enculturated from children. And that's the way that we know. But that's the sense of identity that creates a shadow right here, a block right here that blocks the light, and it creates illness. And that's what disease in essence is. It's not the problem. It's because there is a problem right here in the center. This is where we navigate life. This is where we cultivate and create what our well-being is going to be. Our sense of identity is so important that we cannot live beyond our sense of identity. We cannot be effective beyond our sense of identity. Our sense of identity is what's going to determine what the outcomes of our life and how we're going to create that. And the thing is that becomes offset, corrupted, if you will, because we have inverted the flow of life to come from the outside in. Rather than spirit, soul, body, we define life by body, soul, spirit. And that's why we look at health as just physical. And not, even though we say it's our whole life, we're still thinking about it as just being physical. But health is every dimension of our life. But when we invert the natural flow to go from the outside in, it creates that inner conflict. And our spiritual essence, our spiritual identity becomes obscured. And so we may acknowledge that we are spiritual beings, but our awareness and our active engagement moment by moment in life does not necessarily have that awareness. And so we go against the flow and it creates a resistance. And that in essence is what stress is. Stress is that inner tension that we have on the inside. It's an inner tension of the soul, and that arises when the natural harmony that would exist by our true essence of being is substituted for a contrary state of being. Health really is a complete state of being, but that completeness only happens when the order is correct from the inside out and not from the outside in. Most of us are conditioned to live this way, and we have to be honest that even within the church, and I just mentioned this because I know that there are a number of ministers on, even within the church, we are trying to access and live and walk by our spiritual essence while we are still have mindsets and conditioning that has been conformed to the external reality in terms of our sense of identity. And that is all part of what the renewing of the mind for the transformation has to take place. But this, in essence, is where the root of what we call chronic lifestyle diseases come from. It's interesting that we come up with approaches to deal with disease, but we don't deal with the style of living, although we call it lifestyle illnesses. All the authorities that track the metrics of health, the World Health Organization, the American Psychological Association, they say between 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic or recurring state of stress. Most of us, most of the planet live stressed out. And we hear it in the conversations every day. Up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of human illnesses and disease. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. Chronic stress increases the odds of developing mild cognitive impairment by 87% and Alzheimer's disease by 145%. By the way, Alzheimer's disease is beginning to overtake the rates of cancer now. And why is this happening? When we were growing up, this was not prevalent like this, but it's happening. But stress, now we are treated stress like it is a disease now in itself to be managed and controlled. And that's really not the issue. So we're still even perceiving this from the wrong perspective. When we talk about stress, you were to look up the most common definition by stress by the World Health Organization is the effects of on our minds and our bodies, or the mental and physical effects on our lives from the external pressures of life. And that really is not what stress really is. Stress is that inner conflict between our two natures, our physical and our spiritual nature, in conflict because of how we have deemed and adopted our sense of identity. This is really the root of where stress is. And this is, I'm just put a few points here, which we can all relate to how it presents itself in our lives that we may not be fully aware of, that it is actually the root of where stress springs from. It is secretly experiencing life one way, but openly pretending it's another. It's projecting a positive self-image, yet concerned about what people think about us. It is saying we value the truth, yet not be honest with ourselves or honest with others. We may not be that way all the time, but we have this rooted in us. It is wanting to be significant while defining ourselves by past struggles. It's desiring inner confidence, yet wanting others to affirm our value. It's a fractured way of living. It's wanting to be healthy, yet choosing habits that contradict wellness. It's when there's inconsistencies between our intentions to do, but our actions say something different. It is thinking or feeling one way, yet saying or doing another. It is when outer circumstances define our inner well-being. It is when life feels great only when everything is going good. But when the external reality of life, when things are not ideal, we feel down. We don't feel our best. That is a fractured way of living. Those are all indications that life is defined by our physical senses and not by our divine essence. And this is where, if we really want to live a truly healthy life and disease-free life, we have to reorder it. And we have to know, when we go through that process of transformation, which is a beautiful journey to take. It's an exhilarating and exciting journey to take. When we start to journey into that, not only our body begins to work better, but life begins to work better. Relationships improve. We start to see things working out for us in ways on every level of our life. So stress doesn't come from the external pressures of life, but from how we perceive and react to them, shaped by the internal framework of our mindsets, which is rooted in an unstable sense of self. In scriptures, you can call that being double-minded, fractured way of living, and so unstable way of living. See, life is always perceived through the lens of our inner state of being. We'll always see life based on that. So when our thoughts, emotions, words, and actions align as one seamless frequency, when there's no disparity between them, living is now authentic. Peace, freedom, and the end of stress will follow, and that unlocks the full potential that we possess inside through wholeness. How does this translate into the lifestyle disease? Let me say now how stress, the way we think, this inner tension that we have, let me show you how it translates. And this is what I'm saying to you is all in the medical literature. It's all medically documented. But because we tend to think of life in fragments, we don't put the pieces together. Our central nervous system is how we experience life. Shut our nervous system off, we could be alive, but we'll be like zombies. We can't experience anything. So the brain and the nervous system throughout our entire body is the bridge between that invisible dimension of mind, which is what's calibrating what comes from spirit. Our brain and our central is the bridge between that and our physical body. So here's how it works. The central nervous system extends into what they call the autonomic nervous system. Don't get tied up by any technicalities. I'm just making it very simple. This is a very complex thing I'm simplifying. So that the autonomic nervous system, it has two branches. The first branch is called the sympathetic nervous system, and it deals with stress response. You could remember the sympathetic system because they begin with S for stress. When this part of our nervous system is activated, which it becomes activated whenever there is chronic stress. What is chronic stress? Not what life is presenting, but how we are perceiving and responding to it. That leads to every known lifestyle disease, because as the medical literature shows, chronic stress promotes oxidation and systemic inflammation, which is the root of chronic lifestyle disease, gut dysfunction, DNA damage, and premature aging. Once the sympathetic nervous system is dominant and is always active, and how much is it active? According to medical science, 60 to 80% of people live with this switched on and in overdrive almost every day of life. In fact, some research also shows that while we're sleeping, it's still in overdrive while we're sleeping. We live with this on, and once this is happening, chronic lifestyle disease is unavoidable once this is happening. So I hope we're getting that. The other part of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, is called the parasympathetic nervous system. This one deals with healing and recovery. You could remember the parasympathetic because it's for peace, the opposite of stress. When this one is dominant, this is the system that governs rest, repair, recovery. This is the system that does it. And it becomes activated whenever there's harmony and balance between the mind and the body. Whenever there is that inner peace, that authenticity, when there is joy and gratitude and love that governs and defines our sense of well-being, this system kicks in and it restores balance, it optimizes immune function, cellular repair, and this is where when people experience even the placebo effect, this system is activated. When people who experience what they call spontaneous remissions or spontaneous healing, where they recover from terminal conditions, this is the system that becomes dominant when that happens. And so we can measure this to know which one of these systems is active or dominant through measuring our brainwave activities. So The regulatory state of our central nervous system can be observed through brainwave activity. What we've been able to see is that when our inner state is defined by negative frequencies, because when we talk about brain waves, you're measuring the frequencies, the electrical frequencies of the brain, and it's measured in hertz. When there's fear, worry, anxiety, guilt, shame, these type of negative emotions, negative thoughts, which are all negative frequency, every thought and emotion is a measurable frequency. When it's negative, it shifts brainwave, the brainwave activity shifts the body into sympathetic dominance. That is when life is being defined externally. But when our inner state is one that is of harmony, defined by positive frequencies, love, peace, joy, gratitude, compassion, etc., the brainwave activity from a mind that's governed that way shifts the body into parasympathetic dominance, where the body stays healthy and or it repairs and recovers. Now, this will all make sense to us. The question is, how do we keep it dominant? Now, our body, the sympathetic system that deals with stress, that's there for a reason. That's part of our survival mechanism. And so when there's a crisis or something that we need to engage, an emergency or a threat, the sympathetic system will kick in. But when it's continuously running, it's like a pipe dripping on a concrete floor, and you let that pipe drip there long enough, eventually it starts to wear away and put a hole in the concrete floor. And it's not, we have stress today, or we have stress next week, is that mentally and emotionally, and even subconsciously, this thing is running all the time. It is the continuous flow of stressful thinking, thought patterns, emotional responses to life, things that we have acculturated and programmed into our mind that creates this. And so once we can understand this and understand that the parasympathetic is consistent with our true essence of being, the sympathetic is when we have adopted an egocentric sense of identity, how the world has acculturated us, how we have conformed ourselves to it inadvertently, but nonetheless, when we live from the outside in, the sympathetic is going to always be dominant. And so to unlock this natural flow of healing, we have to learn how to cultivate that inner sense of being that's defined and effected through spiritual awareness. It's when our thoughts and emotions, our words and our actions are one and the same. That's wholeness, that's alignment. That dissolves the inner conflict and it harmonizes brainwave activity and it upregulates the parasympathetic system. It brings the mind and body into harmony. The body naturally starts to repair itself because it has that design woven into it. And it doesn't matter what it is. Anything, it will heal and repair. And that's all in the medical literature. So I'm saying that we possess the capacity. We have to learn how to harness it. But once we do it right, our bodies will heal and repair of anything. And this brings me to the technology that I want to share with you, because the technology I'm going to share with you is so simple. It uses no medicine, no ingredients, no substances, no external frequencies, no devices, no pills, no power. It introduces nothing into the body at all. What it does, it taps in to this matrix of divine design that runs our body, heals our body, and keeps everything in order. It taps into that, and it helps to synchronize it and bring it into balance because of all the things that's blocking the flow. What's blocking the flow? Frequencies that are contrary, the worries, the anxieties, the negative thought patterns, the negative emotions, the stress response. That's what blocks the natural flow. Remove the stress and let peace reign in your heart. And the parasympathetic system upregulates, become dominant, and your body just starts to just naturally heal and repair. We don't have to know how to heal anything. We have to know how to be aligned. There's nothing more important in life than learning how to live aligned. Because once that happens, not just our body feels and functions better, but every dimension of our life, physically, mentally, spiritually, socially, financially, every dimension of our life is going to improve. And so, but we're focusing on our physical well-being this evening. And this is the technology. Now, the technology taps into that. So let me just tell you a little bit about it and show you how it works. It was developed by this gentleman. His name is Jay Dhaliwal. He's a software engineer. And it was formed out of him looking for a solution for his mother's multiple sclerosis, a neurodegenerative condition to which there's no medical cure. He is massively successful, a very brilliant man, and he became very, very wealthy at a pretty young age, and he spent over a 12-year period, $25 million going around the world and working with the most brilliant minds in neuroscience to try to find a solution to his mother's problem, only to find out that they could not give an answer as to why the brain would not send the signals to the muscles. And so the mother, they gave her a short time to live because he watched her deteriorate over the years. As a software engineer, he was able to develop over that 12-year period, was able to write code and software after studying neuroscience and the brain. He came up with a way that how you can get the brain to talk to the body without even introducing anything inside the body. It's absolutely brilliant. And the reason why I love it because it is compatible with and it facilitates my work with people so well because it taps into what already naturally and divinely exists in our bodies. So I'll show you how it works. Let me show you a 2-minute video of how he's going to demonstrate it using an EEG headset, looking at how we measure brainwave activity. And then I'll explain to you the simplicity of how it works. And then we'll go through a few of the patches, and then we'll open up for some questions. So this is a short 2-minute video of him demonstrating how it works. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about a Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrinket, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So Vox Life HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
So when you measure, and I don't know if there's anyone here that may be familiar with brain scans and so on, but we know that the red and the yellow is always indicative of restless, incoherent functioning with the brain, which if you go and you search it, you'll see that that's the state for the average person. Most people, our brain waves look like that. Um, and the green is always indicative of more coherence, more orderly functioning. And and it literally happens in a matter of seconds where that whole coherent functioning, where the different areas of the brain begin to talk to each other in a coherent and orderly manner. That is phenomenal all by itself because it takes people like monks who've been meditating for 30 and 40 years in a monastery that has gained that kind of control over their minds to be able to create that type of an order. So to be able to see something like that happen in a matter of just seconds, it's really unheard of at all. But the technology is based on Nobel Prize research. And so, but what we want to understand is that when we measure brain waves, we're measuring the activity of the mind, which expresses itself in brainwave activities. And so when brainwave activity influences the autonomic nervous system, signaling either the stress response or the peace response based on the nature of the brain waves. When it's negative thinking, negative states of being, the brain waves are chaotic, erratic, disorderly. When it's peace and coherence and it's positive, the brainwave activity is coherent. So in essence, the patch is helping to bring the brain waves into a state that resembles if you are in a positive state of being. What that naturally will do now is the flow, the natural flow that exists that keeps our bodies in balance and makes our bodies heal itself, that now becomes free to be able to function quite naturally. So that is really amazing when you really think about how this really works. The Nobel Prize that is based on is the first one to your left is just talks about how all matter, whether it be a cell in our body or any physical matter, all matter emits and receives electromagnetic transmissions because of the atomic makeup of everything. All matter has an electromagnetic input and output. Then the one to the right of it is they've discovered in more recent times that there are specific receptors embedded in the sensory neurons in the skin. They're called piezoelectric channels. They convert the vibration from anything that touches the skin. It converts vibration, texture, and temperature into bioelectrical signals which the brain interprets. So based on this, Superpatch was able to create a complete medicine-less, ingredient-free solution to bringing our bodies back into balance and to bring the mind and body back into balance. To understand how that works, this can help us. If you think about a QR code, this is a QR code to my website, which has loads of information on it. Now you can't see that. You take a camera and you scan the QR code, it converts this visual pattern of data into a digital signal, and it will unlock all the data and all the information that's on my website. In a very similar way, Superpatch has developed patterns. They have discovered after now 15 years of research and development in neuroscience, which is this is what is proprietary to the company. They have discovered that there are patterns that when it touches the skin, these electric channels in the skin, they scan the pattern and they convert the stimuli into neurological signals, which synchronizes the brainwave activity. What they have discovered is that particular patterns correspond with various areas of the brain. So for example, let's say that there are 3 different centers of the brain that deal with your immune function. When your immune system is not working well, those areas are not in harmony and in balance. By the way, just so you know, anything that develops in your body it first must go out of balance in your brain before it shows up in your body. That's neuroscience, that's known in neuroscience, but in medicine, nobody attacks it from that because it's just control and management. So let's say your immune system was not optimal, then the centers of your brain that governs immune regulation, they're out of balance. So Superpatch, for example, now has found that there's a pattern. When that pattern touches your skin, it sends a signal to the brain that brings those areas into harmony and balance and bring your immune system right back up to factory setting, right back to its optimal function. And so we have seen people who wear the defend patch, is what it's called, who may, example, may have the flu, and it may take them a week or 10 days, and they'll recover like in a matter of hours or a day or two, and it's gone because it upregulates it to its peak. So that's how it works. And so to understand it, no ingredients at all, just what they call tactile patterns. The technology is called vibrotactile technology. These tactile patterns send a signal to the brain, and to understand it even clearer, it's like this. Some of you may know about tuning forks. If you have two tuning forks, if you hit one, the other one is going to start to resonate if it's the same frequency. So if it's the same pitch, it will resonate with it. If it's a different pitch, even though you hit this tuning fork, the other one will not resonate. It will only resonate with it if they're of the same frequency. So to understand it, it's simple. To make it simple, is that there are areas of the brain that are tuned a particular way to affect optimal physiological function. The patches, they help that when they go out of tune, and so function is not optimal, the patches, the patterns on it, sends the right tuning signals to retune it so it will resonate correctly, and then the body becomes optimal. That is the simplicity of it, but that is the power of it. No medicine, no ingredients, just a pattern that the skin reads and sends a signal to the various parts of the brain to bring things back into their right balance and function. After 15 years of research and development, vibrotactile technology has now become peer-reviewed and published science. The International Journal of Family Medicine, the International Journal of Research in Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, and more peer-reviewed journals. So this has now become established science that's now attracting the attention of the greatest medical minds around the world, because nothing has ever been introduced into the healthcare arena. This is a new era of wellness, a new paradigm of wellness that has never existed before, where you are now tapping into the natural design, the natural capacity, the very blueprint that runs and heals our bodies. It's now tapping into that matrix and making it work better. It's not doing anything to the body, it's just releasing what already exists. To me, that is just absolutely phenomenal. This is truly as natural as it can get. And so it's really unlocking the potential that we have within. It's clinically proven with double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that when the mind and body are harmonized through brainwave synchronization, the mind becomes more orderly, the biological systems become more coordinated, and this reestablishes homeostasis. And that optimizes the body's ability to regulate and repair itself. That's the simplicity, but that's the power of it. So far, Superpatch has discovered 14 different patterns that interact with 14 different neural networks to optimize their function in the body. And so when it comes to health, wellness, and performance, they've been able to do that. What they have in research and development now, it's years ahead. It's years ahead of the healthcare industry and even regenerative medicine, what they have in research and development now. And in time to come, you'll probably will hear more about that. But these are the 14 different patches that they have. They're FDA registered. They're 100% drug-free. They enhance physical and mental well-being because the brain doesn't only control biological functions, the brain controls psychological functions. It processes thoughts and emotions. So when we enhance the function of the brain, We don't just get better function in our body, we get better function in our mind. But there's a process or a phenomenon called neuroplasticity, which is how the brain rewires and reorganizes itself. When you use the super patches and the brain entrains itself to this new balance, the brain begins to rewire itself to the new balance. So in time, it starts to create a completely different sense of well-being. We find that our thinking starts to become more orderly. We find that our decision making becomes more fluent. We feel less cluttered in our minds and in our thinking. Our sense of well-being and our disposition, that starts shifting because our minds are becoming more orderly, because our brain has become more coherent in our function. This, ladies and gentlemen, is transformative, because for us to reorder the journey from the outside back in so we can live from the inside out, we have to be able to take governance over our external reality, which has defined us for so long. We have to take governance over our physical well-being as well. And this is all shifts in mindset. The patches will not change your thinking for you. It's not going to change your emotional. It's going to help to bridge the gap to where it becomes easier to get it done without feeling like you're paddling upstream. It just makes it more accessible, not just helping your body to function better, it makes the whole journey of renewing the mind more accessible. Whereas for most people, to engage in the process, it feels like it's an upstream paddle and it's difficult to do. This makes it a lot more accessible. And so, just they when it comes to no contraindications because of no ingredients, it doesn't matter what medication a person may be taking or if they have any medical implants, it has no contraindications with anything. If you have a child that's 2 years old, or you have an elderly that's 99 years, it's safe for everybody. And because it's neurology going straight to biology, they not only are they effective, they work almost immediately. That varies from one person to the other based on their situation. And the interesting about it is that for this technology that is so simple but yet so profoundly powerful, it's accessibly priced that most people can afford it. And so let me just run through just a few of them, and then we'll get into looking at the questions. The one that the CEO demonstrated, which is it's now called the Liberty Patch. This is their flagship patch, so to speak, because this will improve balance and stability. And you can do a test, not just the EEG that we saw, but you can do a physical test. If you were here and we were in a live audience, I can call anyone up and I can check your dynamic and stability and your balance and your grip strength, and then do a before and after, and you will see how much stronger and how much more balanced and stable you feel in a matter of just seconds with applying the patch. That is important. Why? Because they are the most significant markers. You go online and research for how well your body is aging. When our bodies are aging well and not accelerating or prematurely aging, which is the case for most of us because of the stress response, when our bodies are aging well, we have a better chance of living longer with less risk of disease. This is what this patch will do for us. The Defend patch that I told you about, strong immunity, works excellent, is very well. The Peace patch is one of my favorite patches because you get somebody who's feeling stressed out and they feel like they can't cope and they're being overwhelmed. And you put on this peach patch, within moments, you're going to start to feel that calm and that sense. In a very short, just in moments, they start to feel that sense of calm and anxiety. This balances the autonomic nervous system, that which is huge, because most people don't know what it is to have our autonomic nervous system properly regulated. It enhances mental health factors by 24%. This is what all the research has shown regarding these patches. The Freedom Patch deals with pain. It works excellent. Can you imagine relieving pain without inducing any substances into your body? If you're into athletic performance, if you're into exercising, you're into the gym, you're into physical activities, the Victory Patch, which is now being introduced into the professional sports arena. I think about half of the NFL Teams are now beginning to use them. Their scientific advisory board are now working on these levels with some of these teams. And the CEO has said recently that in the very near future, you're going to see some of these celebrity people coming out and talking about the victory patch. Now, you know that when it comes to pro sports, you cannot get anything like this into the pro arena unless it's been properly vetted by the authorities. And that's just additional validation to the efficacy and the compliance that the company follows. When it comes to energy, which is probably one of the most common things that people go to a doctor for, stay away from the energy drinks. They are toxic to your body, toxic to your brain, toxic to your organs. This is clean energy from the inside. I call it energy on demand. So you got long drives to make, and you're feeling tired. You got a lot to do. But you put this on. This is clean energy, and you're alert at the same time. Sleep is perhaps the most important thing that we should really consider in our overall well-being, and a lot of people do not get restorative and regenerative sleep. This will help us to be able to do that. Focus, concentration, clarity in our minds. The focus patch is really great for that. We're feeling under the weather. We have low moods. We're feeling a little bit depressed. You put on the joy patch. In moments, you're going to have more of that positive sense of well-being about you. People who are dealing with addictions, and it's not just food cravings or substance addictions. It's also people who have addicted thought patterns, people who have a tendency to overthink, overwork me, and they can't seem to control it. This helps us to get a handle on things like that. You want to burn more calories while you're resting or while you're sleeping. This helps us to do that very safely without any chemicals and jitters. Healthy skin. Let me tell you, this is really becoming one of the patches I'm really focusing on, because people that are using this, they're really seeing the difference in their skin. Within the first month of using the Lumi patch, it literally begins to start to show the difference in the health of your skin. For men, as we get older, we tend to lose that masculine function and performance. The rocket patch is going to help to solve that. When you combine patches and you synchronize the brain waves of various regions of the brain at the same time, you're now going to another level of enhancement of well-being. This is just absolutely incredible. People are looking for solutions that are safe, that are non-invasive, that are non-toxic, that doesn't have the side effects. And here it is that this company has come up with a solution, a technology that is so simple but profoundly powerful, and something that has never existed in terms of how it interacts with the very design of the human being. It taps in to really our spiritual potential, if you really look at it, and helps our body to work to activate or to release what naturally resides within us. Very easy to use. You just peel it. You can pretty much stick it anywhere. Each patch lasts for 24 hours. They're safe. They're dermatologically tested, etc. And the medical advisory, the scientific advisory board, they are involved with the research and development team in terms of making sure they're compliant and that the real world application is exactly what it should be. I've had the opportunity to meet some of these people, and they're all really quite impressive in their own rights. So the invitation is for you to enhance your well-being like you've not been able to do it before, and get aligned. Alignment is it. Now, this is a bridge. In my work, I look at this as a bridge to get us in through that process of transformation, which happens one way, by the renewing of our minds. And it's a process that we have to engage. It's an activity, a practice that we need to engage and develop. This is a bridge that helps us to be able to harness it. We have a Facebook page that has thousands of testimonies of how this is impacting people's lives around the world. To be able to access this, the easiest way to access it is to become part of the global business community, whether you're interested in the business or not. But it's a way to engage healthy lifestyles with financial empowerment for those who choose to do that. So there are people who become part of the business community just to be able to access the technology at more affordable prices. They retail online through Superpatch Associates for $60 for a month's supply. A 4-week supply is $60, and they're all the same price. The wholesale price is $45 for a pack. To become part of the global business community, it's less than the cost of one pack at wholesale to become part of the business community. But once you do that, you now have access to wholesale pricing, and you have the option, if it appeals to you, to participate in their global economic model. I'll also say this, for this month alone, the company had announced at the beginning of the month that only for this month, because of a number of different specials they were running, you can now become part of the global community for just $1 until the end of this month. So people, sometimes they'll become part of the global community. They'll become a lifetime member for $40, or in this case, you can do it for $1 now. And just you can now access the technology at wholesale cost, which is $45, or depending if you buy 4, you can actually get it less than that. But this is, the company has made it easy to access the technology. And for those who are looking for additional streams of income, you can choose to participate in it. So what some people do is that they become involved, they use the technology, they feel it, they experience it, and what inevitably happens for many is that they just start to talk about it and realize that this is something that there's a great need for out there, and it could become an additional stream of income, not just where you are and where you live, but this is global. The company has global distribution offices around the world where they can, and so this could become an online business for many people, for those who, if that appeals to you. So I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we can move into looking at taking any questions. But there's an associate of mine, Melvina. She lives in New York. She's from Trinidad originally, and Melvina she was introduced to me. She has a condition that she's been dealing with for over 30 years, and medically they could not tell her what her problem is. It's a neurological problem. It got progressively worse over the years, affecting not just her entire body, but both also her voice and her eyes, etc. And she'll tell you about it. And they had no solution for her. And she's been using the patches now. I think it's probably going into 3 months now. And when she shared her story with me and what was happening, I said to her, people need to hear this. And her doctor right now wants to know what it is she could have done to bring about this change, because there's nothing that they had otherwise that could have helped her. So you may have to make Melvina a co-host, Dr. Glasgow, so she can share her story. She's just going to take a couple of minutes and share her story, which is just one of many dramatic changes that has taken place. After that, I guess you can either put your questions in the chat if you want, or you can just unmute your mics and ask your questions after Melvina. And I think that Dr. Glasgow, you said you had someone that had a story that they wanted to share. But once they take a couple of minutes and share a little bit of the story, we're open for any questions about anything that we have shared regarding the technology or the health concept.
You, Dr. Homer, Dr. Glasgow, good evening.
Good evening, Melvina. Good to be here.
Yes. Excuse me for not having my video on. I'm really not in a position to do that right now, but I do want to share. So my story began over 30 years ago, like Dr. Homer said. I was quite young, and this thing just came out of nowhere, it seemed, and just plagued me. My head would move from left to right, just like that. The only thing back then, it wasn't something persistent. It was an intermittent movement. I could not understand it. I went to various doctors. they couldn't understand it. It didn't line up with anything they knew. So eventually it was diagnosed as an essential tremor. Well, who needs a tremor? But I could not take the medications. One of them prescribed a tablet called Indoral, and he said it was really meant to slow me down and put my body in a more relaxed state so the tremors would not be so noticeable and all that. And the Indoral was giving me slurred speech and really making my movement sluggish. So I stopped. And then he suggested I drink a glass of wine often enough and see what that does. Anyway, I couldn't do that too often either. So I learned to live with this condition. Some doctors even gave up, said, I don't know what else to tell you. One said he was not going to give up, an orthopedic surgeon, because he said, you're too young for this. But he had to give up eventually because he just could not come up with a solution or a cause even. But hearing Dr. Homer tonight, I've learned some new truths because he is so right. Wellness is not just physical, it's social, it's emotional. And in hindsight, I could see that the effects of this, or the cause of it rather, was emotional. It was having an effect on my social life. I grew up, I was subject to much criticism and things growing up. I didn't have long hair. I was tall and lanky, and things like that. And there was teasing. Some of it came from within my household, and those things bothered me, but I kept them on the inside of me. If anything, they made me more determined to succeed in life. But they were there and they tampered with my self-confidence. And all these things I can see help to promote this condition. And then I did have a very traumatic experience, like when I was around 30. And to tell the truth, that's when this thing became a permanent condition. It got a big trigger. So sometimes I was afraid to take the forefront. Sometimes I just decided I'm going to take it regardless, because he always felt people's eyes are on me. If somebody looked at me 1 second too long, I felt it was staring because they're seeing this shaking, and it just didn't bode well for me at all, socially, emotionally. And then I had some external triggers. If I'm hungry, if you get me upset, or I get upset at things, if I feel afraid, if in response to the temperature, it's cold, these things would exacerbate this condition. So I am in total agreement that it is external circumstances that we allow to dictate what's happening on the inside of us and that cause us to be ill. And then we cannot get any kind of physical treatment to heal us in those areas. I stopped taking pharmaceuticals. I don't up to this day, because whenever I read the little fine print, I say the only thing missing here as a side effect is death. So no, I'm not going to do it. And so, and then I grew up with a mother who was, we might say, a bush doctor. Because she always had some bush remedy for everything. It's the worm grass, the fever grass, the sage, every bush, so we grew up with herbs. And so now I decided, look, I am not going back to any doctor. I am resolved that this is a condition I have to deal with. I put my faith in God and I said, I know you're not going to let me go through this for the rest of my life. So let's see how long it would last. I said, there are greater days ahead of me than what's behind me. So I'm going to go along with faith. And then I went to a doctor one day for some other reason, and he looked at me and he asked me what was going on, and I told him the essential trauma diagnosis. And he begged me. He said, "Well, I hear you say you're not going to see any doctor again, but please, please, just go and see this one person, this one neurological surgeon, because he's so good and all that." And I went there, and this one did his scans and all that, and concluded that I had a condition that required screws to be put in my skull. And no, it's not happening. So for sure, I was not going to see a doctor anymore. And then one of my pastors told me about the Homer brothers. And I was heading down to Trinidad, and she gave me the phone number for the one who lives there. I did call him. We did meet. He did introduce us to the patches, and he did saunas and all that with us. And I don't know what was happening, but I thought this thing made sense and I was going to try it. And so I came back to New York, and I continued to use it. And my best health story is that one Sunday after church service, a sister called me and said, she said, "Come, sit here. You know what I wanted to tell you? I notice you don't be shaking so anymore. What are you using?" And that was a hallelujah moment. That was the great turning point that I needed. And then I realized, wait, I used to wake up like 4 times a night. Now I sleep through the night, or I wake up once, twice, maybe at most. I'm calm. This should have gotten me angry, but I was so calm. And then I went to the doctor even last week, and my blood pressure was like 111 over 70 something. And I said, "No, take that again, you know. And I still at that point did not connect that to the use of the patches. And my voice still has the tremors sometimes. It happens because of the constant lateral movements, but it's better. It's getting better. I know it. I feel it. And so many things are happening in my body. Sometimes I can feel the tremors, and it's my fault. I go hungry for too long. I went to bed too late. I didn't get enough sleep. I cause those irritants in my body. But I have to say that using these patches is the best thing that has ever happened where this condition is concerned. I am thankful. I'm thankful to my pastor. I'm thankful to the Homer brothers. I'm thankful to God. And indeed, I believe the days ahead of me are better than the ones I've left behind me. And Dr. Homer, thank you for allowing me to share. I hope I've encouraged someone. You may have a loved one who has a similar condition, and then all the other side effects of it, those positive side effects, side impartations. I am so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Melvina. I just want to highlight a couple of things that Melvina said about she had her concern was the shakes, the tremors that she was having. And she didn't really go into what she had shared with me in terms of her voice and her eyesight, which has since improved as well. But what she highlighted is that her concern was the tremors, but along the way, she is noticing that her physical health is improving in numerous other areas as well. And why is that? It's not for the tremors, it's not for restoring her voice or her sight, it's not for her blood pressure, it's not for the circulation, it's not for anything. The body naturally will repair itself as long as we can get mind and body back into its natural balance. It just naturally, and so that we hear these stories all the time where a person may have a particular concern, but after a while of using it, as the brain becomes more and more entrained to the balance, they're saying, and by the way, I've noticed this, and by the way, this is now happening, and by the way, and things that they may not have even thought of, they're seeing improvements. That is the thing. But here's the biggest thing that stood out to me in your testimony, Melvina, which is important. The calmness that you're feeling now. In other words, your state of mind has also shifted to where you will find that you're not going to feel as stressed as you used to feel. You're not your whole sense of disposition. That's what happened because you have a more orderly functioning brain, which is going to help to influence a more orderly functioning mind, not just a more orderly functioning body. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Listen, I want to agree with that so much. Guys, listen. I have been using the liberty, the peace, the defense, and focus. I use 4 right now. And the kind of peace I feel and control, because sometimes there might be a chaotic situation and I am able to deal with things so cohesively that before I might be fussing about something, it's so much. And I tell my husband every day, I say like I am really dealing with life so much better, you know? And so I highly, highly, highly recommend. All right, before we open up for questions, we can start open up for question now, and then Wendy, I'd like to share a little bit. Right, and you could unmute Wendy and begin to just share a little up as to what part of your testimony. In the meantime, while Wendy shared, I would like you to put your names and your numbers in the chat, right? So that I could get a feedback, so I could reach you with your interest. So Wendy, could you share with us, and then we open it up for questions. Any question you have. Any questions you have, you want to ask, Dr. Homer is here to respond. So let me open it up now, and Benny, you can come in after. Any questions you want to ask?
Dr. Jennifer has her hand up. Dr. Jennifer?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Dr. Homer, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And Dr. Glasgow and Pastor Glasgow, thank you so much for this awesome invitation. I mean, I am just thrilled with technology. I'm an ND also in the area of functional nutrition. So as you said, Dr. Homer, the holistic approach is most certainly what people are looking for, and also for that where they can have their bodies healed without all of that medication and all of these things with the side effects, right? So this was just a fabulous presentation. My question is that I know you mentioned the patch lasts for 24 hours, and I know it's based on each person's condition, of course, but I guess the question would be, is there a certain period where you would stop using the patch?
That's both a yes and a no. You may start using patches with a particular concern, and when it's resolved, you may just do a maintenance. Let me explain what I mean. A person may be dealing, say, with insomnia, and they'll use the REM patch, perhaps along with the Liberty. I always suggest that they use Liberty because to bring the whole brain into coherence is always foundational. And then they will add the REM patch. And after the brain has been entrained over whatever number of months, which it takes time, you're going to start to see improvements in their sleep, either from the very first night, maybe the second night, but they're sleeping better. But when the brain becomes sufficiently entrained, a point will come where they find that I'm sleeping really well now, and I don't need that patch anymore. And so it may be that for various other things. But there are, the world we live in today, the quality of food we have today, the environment, etc. There are 3 foundational patches that I suggest to the people that I work with. The Liberty, which keeps the brain in its coherence balance, just to maintain that in any normal day is an almost impossibility for the average person in a modern society. But the more our brains remain coherent, the more our biological systems also become more coordinated. That's one. The other one I suggest that everybody use every day is defend, because our immune system is always on the go. And the big challenge, as you know, in the healthcare arena is dealing with these conditions while keeping our immune system optimal. So keeping our immune system at its peak, always upregulated, keeping our brains well balanced, and the peace, which keeps our autonomic nervous system, the body's stress response, but the three of them together brings such coverage from head to toe in terms of how all your systems are running. So what you're doing is you're being proactive, you're looking at better function, better regulation, reducing the aging capacity, you're looking at prevention and protection. So those three, I call those the three foundational patches that gives you total coverage for your systems to run better and for you to have less risk of problems as you get older. To that, you can add anything. So people may start out with just a couple of patches. They found improvements. They may not need this or need that anymore. But I would always suggest keep your systems running optimally. And that's hard to do in the world we live in today and the quality of food that we have. And I know you would appreciate that. So some things, I don't particularly have any of those types of problems, but on any given day, I could wear anywhere from 4 to 6 patches in any given day.
I see.
You would only add some of them based on certain things. When I go to the gym, when I go to work, I put on the victory patch and the good thing about it is not that you have to wear it for a period of time to get the effects. As soon as I walk into the gym, I can stick on the victory patch, and my strength, my power, and my agility, it increases in seconds. My strength goes up. My ability to function improves right away. So things like that, I'll only use that when I go into the gym. And you may only use the freedom patch if you happen to have a pain. Various things like that. So some things you don't need to be using them all the time. You could use them within your protocols to help they certainly are going to accelerate the rate at which people heal and repair. Whatever different protocols you may be using, Dr. Jennifer. It will help to accelerate and even broaden the efficacy of it. And then you can streamline it and they say, well, you don't need them anymore, or maybe just maintain with this or that. You would know how to be able to be flexible with it. So it's both a yes and a no.
Awesome. So just to reiterate, you said the liberty, the immune, and what was the third one?
Is liberty, defend, and peace.
Okay, defend and peace.
Those are three really, really powerful patches. You'll see when you start to use them. If you did what the liberty does, you remember we saw the video.
Yes.
Brings the brain into coherence. What the liberty does for the brain, the defend does to the body. So it's not just upregulating your immune function. It is also harnessing biochemistry and bringing your body into balance. So if you were to do, for example, say one of these live blood analysis, where you saw the blood is low and it's all clumped up, maybe within a half hour putting on the defend, it's going to start to oxygenate, it's going to regulate chemistry, the cells are going to open up. You'll start to see improvement within a matter of minutes just putting that on. So that's the equivalent to the body for what the liberty is doing to the brain. When you use the two of them together, that brain-body synergy is so eloquent. I mean, that's something you want to keep. Whether you're feeling sick or not, you want to just keep your systems running that efficiently. That's your protection. When you bridge that with the peace, which is autonomic nervous system regulation, stress response, hormone balance, you now have such coverage in terms of optimizing how your systems are running. I absolutely love it. So, yeah.
Thank you so kindly.
Great.
Yeah, Dr. Homer, I actually see it as, many of us use, can you do that? Yeah. Yes, many of us use vitamins to help our bodies. And when we feel good, we continue using it because it's working for us. So I see the patch being the same, that the patch is working, we continue using the patches. It is better because it isn't chemicals that are actually going into our system. So should we continue using it? I say yes.
The ones I just mentioned are very foundational. Listen, the hardest thing for a person to do is keep the immune system optimal. Now, if you have something that's doing it naturally by keeping your brain in balance,
Yes.
not by ingesting anything, that is phenomenal. So if you can maintain that, if you can maintain this stress response and keep your autonomic nervous system well regulated and keep your brain coherently and in balance, and what that means systemically for biological function, I mean, that's good assurance. You can now add whatever in and out. But what you said, Mr. Glasgow, is important, that the patches do not replace nutrition. So you still need to be observing good healthy eating, regular exercise, all the other aspects of a healthy lifestyle. We want to engage that. So it's very easy because see, the mindset of the old paradigm is health is physical. So because we're taking something that's making us feel better, we could think it may replace nutrition. It's the mindset that a lot of diabetics have, that because I'm taking insulin, I could still indulge in my cake and ice cream because I have, but that's the kind of mindset that digs a hole for us. So remember that the whole issue with illnesses is because of mindsets, conditioning. We have to engage the process of change. The patches are not going to change our patterns of thinking, but what it does, it makes it easier to stay more present. It makes it easier to stay more focused. It makes it, our emotional resilience begins to improve the longer we've taken it. So it seems more accessible to be able to engage it, as opposed to, we can't focus on, I mean, if we go into church and there's a worship song playing, you can't even stay focused on the song for the whole song before your mind is all over the place. That type of thing, we find that now that happens a whole lot less. There is more coherence, there's more fluency, there's less restlessness. What that means is we can now harness and now engage the process of change. What we may need now is just guidance in how to do that effectively. So this is transformative on multiple levels, beyond physical. Yeah.
Any more questions, guys? Go ahead and ask your questions.
Yes, good night, good night. It's a pleasure being here.
Livingston, you have a question?
Yes, Livingston speaking. Yes. You hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Go ahead.
As I heard the discussion tonight, I thought about, the Trinidad football team. We already need that patch of victory, here in Trinidad, because it seems as if we're not winning anything at all. But I'm just thinking in terms of those names, liberty, defend, and peace. As a pastor, those names, sound so close, to what we will tell people. Just renew your mind in the word, become spiritual by praying and so on, and that will give you the liberty and the peace and the defense that you need. I understand, we have our brain functions that need to be normalized to normalize things, but I also did not hear much about our spirits, because, we are not just soul and body, but we are spirits as well. And what impact this patch, because this patch, it sounds like a supernatural intervention. It sounds like a miracle. All right. So I don't know if you could share anything with regards to the transformation that you're speaking about in terms of this patch, and how, it will affect, a person's spirit. We understand about the soul, we understand about the body, but we didn't understand too much about the spirit part.
Well,
Dr. Homer, let me just say this quickly before thing. Pastor Livingston was very late.
oh, okay. So he didn't get to hear that
He
part.
did not get the spirit. He did not get the whole first part. He missed Livingston, you missed it. You missed the whole
Well,
spirit.
well, are you recording it? Are you?
Yes.
Well, so he could always get that back. But there is, we know that to your more in line with your question, the transformation that we are seeking happens by the renewing of the mind. What many people may not be quite aware at first is that you won't renew your mind unless you rewire your brain. The brain literally has to be rewired for the mind to be renewed. The renewing of the mind cannot happen without engaging our spiritual well-being, because that's the source. That is the very essence of our being. That's the essence of who we are. As an expression, the divine expression of God in human form, that's our essence. That's the starting point. Now, the values of what defines spiritual well-being has to become now what calibrates and what defines our living, from our thought life to how we speak to how we interact with people. Just doing that alone requires a discipline of thinking that becomes difficult to engage if we cannot gain governance over our physical well-being. Because we have been conditioned into, inadvertently from children, we have been conditioned into a way of living, thinking, and being that is governed by our physical nature, our sensory perceptions. That's our reality. Scriptures will call it being conformed to the world or conformed to the patterns of the world. Now, so you can say, just as an example, a person may say, you could ask a person, do you think your physical health is important to your life? And most people will say yes. Do you think it's a priority? Yes, it should be a priority. But the way we are actually living does not say we truly believe that. And I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If a person says, I don't want to be sick and I really want to be healthy, but they're not engaging a lifestyle, they're doing things that they know they ought to, or not doing things that they know they ought to, as the case may be, that's a mindset. If they can't do that physically, I promise you, they cannot engage their spiritual qualities, because we must gain governance over what has ruled us. We have the spiritual potential to do that, but this is where the mind comes in, because it's going to take a disciplined effort. It's me saying, it's me standing up in front of the buffet table in the food court and looking at the thing that I enjoy most and saying to myself, I'm not going to have that. I'm going to have this. And feel that tug inside where my flesh says, one, a little bit in a hurt, and my rational mind saying, I'm not doing that. That tug that's the tug between the flesh and the spirit. That is Galatians 5, the flesh against the spirit against the flesh. That's what we're dealing with. But we know, understanding our identity, we have to first come back to the place where our identity, which is going to determine our ability to function properly, our identity, which has been anchored in our physical nature because we've been conditioned that way, we now have to first now acknowledge that we are indeed a spiritual being. Not that we have a spirit, we are a spiritual being. And our identity must become anchored into that to take governance over the outside. So it begins with acknowledging that I am spiritual, And now there's a process of how my sense of identity, which has been conformed to my physical nature, I now have to, and how I gain governance, how I return back to my spiritual nature, by gaining governance over my physical, because my physical has ruled me. So here I am, I go to prayer meetings, I go to services, I read my Bible, I'm trying to, and that all helps, and that is necessary. But I'm not reigning and taking governance over my physical well-being because I think somehow it's going to happen automatically. It's not. The transformation does not happen automatically. We have to do, as Paul says, we have to practice righteousness because it is in the practicing that the brain becomes rewired. It has to be rewired, and it's wired to what it is now because we have practiced living that way.
Right.
So here's a simplicity of it. If we learn something new, and this could be anything, whether it's playing an instrument, learning a new philosophy, a new belief, or whatever, if we learn something new, the instant we have learned it, our brain instantly creates a new synaptic connection. It happens instantly. This is neuroscience. If I keep learning it, and I meditate on it, and I start to get into this, my brain creates more and more synaptic connections until it becomes a network of connections for this new thing that I'm learning. If I continue on with it, it gets to a point where when the network has been forged, I don't have to think about how to do it. I do it without even thinking now because it has become a network. So today, whether we brush our teeth or whether we drive without thinking, we could only do what we do because we have networks that has been created for it. On the other hand, if we learn something new, like we might have learned some new things tonight, but we don't continue on in it, from the time we learned it, a new synaptic connection. We repeat it, more synaptic connections, but then we stop. 3 weeks passed and somebody come and said, what is that thing you told me 3 weeks ago? Oh, I don't remember. Because the synaptic connections dissolved, you never stayed with it long enough for it to rewire. There is no renewing the mind without rewiring the brain. That happens through repetition. That repetition is engaging in a new lifestyle, a new practices, a new way of thinking, living, and being, with the understanding that our true nature is spiritual, and our sense of identity has to become conformed to that. That we are, because we cannot live beyond our sense of identity. Our effectiveness of living is governed by our sense of identity. And if our sense of identity is rooted in our physical nature, we would find, and we will know how to do it when we learn the principles. If somebody says something to me and I get offended by it, and I get all kind of negative, I am still governed by my physical nature. If I am judging people, I see something happening in a distance, I don't even know what the person's story is, but I got an opinion and I got a judgment, I can make it. I am still governed by my physical nature. We will know our emotions tells us whether we are aligned or misaligned. Because the more we become aligned, the more there is love, joy, peace, compassion, forgiveness. There is more positivity. But the more life upsets us, the more we are aggravated, the more we worry, the more fear-based emotions exist, we are governed by our physical nature. That has to be renewed. And how is that renewed? It starts by, we have to get to a place where my sense of identity is completely shifted. And it begins by me acknowledging that I am a spiritual being. Now I need to understand, what does that mean? If I look at my life, what in my makeup tells me that I'm spiritual? I know what is physical, but we are not even clear about what soul, mind, which is a mind, heart, and will. We're not sure even how to identify that, most people. And we're not even sure how to identify what in us is spirit, what in us is mind and heart. We only know what is body, which is what our identity is rooted in, because we're acculturated that way. We have to now say, how do I identify what is spirit? And that's not hard to do, but we have to know what is spiritual because it comes out all the time, but we don't even identify it as spirit. There are moments when it emanates and comes forward. There are moments in service when it may come up. There are moments when we're interacting with people and it comes out. But we're not aware, sufficiently aware to say, that's the real me there. That's the real me. But it's fighting against the me that has been conformed to the world. This is what Paul talks about when he says the flesh is against the spirit, and it creates a condition called double-mindedness, which makes life unstable. This is why we struggle. But if we understand the teachings of the scriptures, life is not meant to be a struggle at all. The divine formula is, if we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and we understand that formula, life is not a struggle. Whatever we need, whenever we need, and how much ever we need, it will happen. Just exactly how we need it. And you see, I'm telling you these things because these are things that I've tested and over the years in the whole living model that I've developed. And I say that to people all the time. You don't just test it, apply it, and watch and see what happens. Because if it is true, it must necessarily happen. So the process of renewing the mind, the patches makes it accessible. Because when we sit down to say, you know what, I need to try and get a hold and harness my mind and not let my mind be like a wild horse that I can't seem to tame. Sit down and spend some quiet prayerful time. Even to sit down and spend some quality prayerful time, our mind's all over the place. When you start to apply the patches, yes, your body starts to feel better, but guess what? My mind is not as restless. It feels calmer. It feels more serene. Guess what? I could now get to where I could not have gotten to as easy in my prayer life, in my focus. I could now feel that essence. Oh, that noise in the mind just dissolves and this love just starts to come up. And I just start to get into a weeping because I feel overwhelmed by the love and gratitude in my heart. We don't even need to know how to do that. That's natural to our being. Remove the noise and watch and see what comes up inside. The patch is a bridge to doing that. The patch can't do anything spiritually. We are spirits, but the patch helps to remove the noise that it can flow up. And in so doing, our bodies function better. So the patches really are tapping in to the blueprint of our divine design, which is why I don't need any ingredients. It's removing the noise so that it could flow free. That's why so you should, Dr. Glasgow shared your recording because this self-healing capacity that we have, which is all documented in the medical literature, medicine treats it as a negative, but man, this thing is powerful. We possess it. It's built into us. It's our blueprint. It's woven into our very design. But the renewing of the mind and the transformation is about how to get back to living and moving and having our being in it, by it, through it, with it, one with it. It's a beautiful thing. A beautiful.
Oh, that was wonderfully explained. All right, we are looking at time now, and I see does somebody have their hand up? Oh, that's me. That was my hand. Okay, I will allow if you have.
Wendy is saying that the Zoom is telling her that Zoom workplace needs to access her microphone. That's why she couldn't.
Yeah, I see that. But I don't know how to do that. I was asking if it's on her side. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
What does it say?
It said that the Zoom workplace needs to access her microphone.
Okay, so she let her allow the Zoom to access it.
No, we out of time.
All right. In the meantime, Amira is asking, can the patch be used on children with ADHD? Yes, the patches can be used on children, on anyone, all being very safe. ADHD, you would have to determine as to how chronic it is And if there's anything auxiliary that's happening besides, but yes, there's not going to be a patch. There's going to be a combination of patches that will help people that have. We have a patch called Flow. It harnesses 5 of the networks in your brain to deal with executive decision, memory, attention, um, uh, concentration, and things like that. So when you use the Flow, the Liberty, the Defend, and the Peace, and of course, with everything, always pay attention to what you put into your mouth. You're not going to be doing things that's going to, you don't want to you don't want to be filling up a bucket that has holes in it that causing leaks. So if there are foods that are working against the very condition, stimulants and additives and so that you don't need to be taken in, you don't want the patches to have to work through unnecessary layers of imbalances. So in fact, by saying that, let me say for those who are here, particularly Dr. Jennifer and anyone who else may be a practitioner, the patches are enhanced and the efficacy is accelerated and expanded when you engage it mentally. Meaning, if we were feeling, let's say we were feeling stressed out, we can center ourselves. We can get into a quiet place and by our own minds, we can breathe and we can harness our thoughts and we can get to a place we could probably repeat something positive, a scripture or whatever, and we can bring our place where we feel calm. So in other words, we can bring ourselves on our own to a more calm state. But let's say it was beyond you, and because you were so overwhelmed. If you put on the peace patch, in moments, you can start to feel that calmness coming on. But if you engage it additionally, then the frequencies, because it's all frequencies, your frequency, by engaging it, amplifies the frequency of the patch and it gets you there so much faster. Happens almost instantly, like that. Rather than putting on the patch, because here's what we've seen some people do. They're feeling stressed out because they're in some altercation with a group of people and they're all worked up. They put on the peace patch, but they're still engaging in the altercation. You're working against it. It's not going to do that. Let me also say, if you were in perfect balance, if you use the patch for, say, stress or for sleep or for any other symptom, but your brain was already in perfect balance for that, the patch is going to do nothing for you if your brain is already in perfect balance in that area. The patch is not going to do anything. Because if your brain is in perfect balance, then you won't even have an issue if that part of the brain, where that part of the brain regulates. You see, so remember, the brain is both physiology and psychology. This is new. This is not, people are not accustomed to this. This is both sides of the coin working simultaneously, the mind and the body, which is bridged by the brain. And this is now harnessing functionality of the brain, so it's having an impact on both sides. That's what makes it transformative. So learning to work with this is something new that's not been available before. That's why it's easy to think. And Dr. Jennifer, you start to use it in your practice, which you'll be glad that you did. You're going to hear people speaking about the patch as though the patch is doing it. They'll say, what patch do you have for this? What patch do you have for that? Or since I've been using the patch has done this. The patches do nothing for symptoms. The patches bring your brain into balance so that the natural healing potential in the body flows freely for the body to always take care of itself. And in terms of what Pastor Livingston had asked earlier, the body, we say the body is self-healing, but the body in itself cannot heal without the mind. And the mind in of itself with the body is not complete without the flow of spirit. Our spiritual potential never stops because it's what's animating the body. It's what making cells multiply by the millions every minute. It's what's keeping everything running. It's our spiritual essence that's giving us life. It doesn't stop. But the qualities that's supposed to flow through by which we would express into the way we live our lives, that gets blocked by a mind that becomes conformed to external realities as truth. And that is what has to be transformed. That's the process that we're going through. This bridges the gap and makes it accessible without the struggle.
All right. This has been amazing. Amazing. So guys, I know you have heard a lot. Is there any more question? Anyone, please?
It almost sounds like a different form of meditation. Well, it's interesting. It's not going to replace meditation, but the EEG scans that they've done in their research and development is that when a person is in meditation and they're in that place of calm and peace, the part of the brain that lights up in meditation is the part of the brain that lights up when you put on the peace patch.
Okay.
But I've heard some people speak about it like, I don't have time to get into meditation. I'll just wear the peace patch. But while it can help you to feel calmer and so on, it's not going to replace what meditation can do.
That's right.
Meditation it's too wide and too deep for that. Can everyone please put your phone? Okay, phone number. All right. Okay, got that.
So I think Natalie. Natalie is the only person that responded to my request a long time ago, guys. Could you please put your name and your number in the chat? All right. And Dr. Homer, how we do this? If you are well, I wouldn't say if you are interested, you should be interested, all right? You please reach out to me. Call me is fine. Text me. And so we will arrange for you to get your patches, right? Because I am in constant relationship with Dr. Homer. And so we will work this thing on. Once you are interested, there are a few people I know that Deborah invited, you can get to Deborah, Deborah will get to me. All right? But let us make the connection. If you think this was a good, if you think this was a good, I want you to put a yes in the chat. If you think this was a good presentation and it's something that you would be interested in, I want to see yes in the chat. Let me see it. I see excellent. I see
Put some fire.
I want to put some fire in the chat. Yes, very, very informative, awesome, nice. Good. Keep it going. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Outstanding. Awesome. Yes. Fire. I see the fire coming too. A fire in the chat. All right. This was excellent. Dr. Homer, thank you so much. You can get the yes as a comment, right? So you all know my number. I would have contacted you, so you know my number. Or I think Deborah bought some people that I may not necessarily know. Well, I know you now, all right? So contact me tonight. Just text me, tell me yes, you're interested, and we will talk. Dr. Homer, I'll be calling you, right? So we can.
Well, that's fine. Well, thank you again for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for your attention and your participation. I thoroughly enjoyed being here, and look forward to working with anyone as time goes by.
It was great. It was great.
Let me reiterate that. Thank you so much, guys. This was wonderful. I'm glad that you came. I'm glad that every single one of you came. Thank you very much. I am honored, and I know you feel really good too after this. So thanks again. Have a good night. And please, everyone, reach out to me. I am available all the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Mr. Glasgow, thank you.
Okay,
Right.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.